I wonder if you can remember your most embarrassing moment this far. And I've approached a junction and I'm this classic daydreamer. I have my head in my Walkman, I'm busy listening to something. I've also got a book I'm reading and I'm about to cross the road and I forget to look where I'm going and I end up crossing the road. A bus is actually coming into the same road and I bumps into me and I fall to the ground. He's looking at me, wondering if I'm okay, wondering whether he needs to call the ambulance. I'm just literally dazed. I get audience around me, sort of checking to see if I'm okay. It was the most cringeworthy moment I can ever remember that happened to me, and it all because I wasn't looking where I was going. Maybe you've had something similar happen to you, or maybe it's just me. The point of my story is this: I hadn't looked far enough. There's been many situations in my life where I recall being blind. Maybe for some of you, you just don't know who Jesus is. Maybe for some of you, you've got a strong faith, but feel like you've lost your connection with God and you need a fresh insight into who He is. I would love to encourage you today by sharing with you this amazing story of blind Bartimaeus. He was sitting by the roadside begging, blind Bart, when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, and he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him, it says, and it told him, "Be quiet." But he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, said, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." He throws his cloak aside and he jumps to his feet and he came to Jesus. And Jesus said, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus, "I want to see, Rabbi." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Immediately, it says, he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Now, it's a beautiful story, and sometimes I think we can read it and just see it as Jesus, the power of him, and the way that he loved the least of us. But you see, I think he's got this beautiful application to our lives, of even those of us who think that we have it all. Consider, what does it look like to go to Jesus when we can't see, when we're going through sometimes something that we need his vision in our lives? Maybe you felt like you've been blindsided in another area of your life. Perhaps you're feeling a bit unclear about decisions that you need to make. Shall I take that new job? Or why has God not blessed me with a partner? Or why is there such war in my country? Or what's life going to look like without my husband or wife? Or maybe you're just feeling isolated and you just don't know how you can meet other people. Perhaps you're going through some blind spots in your life right now where you just can't see. For example, I really struggle with keeping the balance between my children, my husband, my work, my time with God. All of that, I struggle. I love John the Baptist. He's one of my favourite characters in the Bible, and his prayer was this every day: "Less of me and more of you, Jesus." See, I think we've got to really acknowledge that we have a need and come to Jesus with a whole lot of trust. We have questions about our future, about our kids, about our retirement, about our work. We need to come to him. There are people who will say even now, "I'm okay, I'm not broken, I don't need a crutch like you." And I've heard that from many of my agnostic friends, even from some of my family members. See, I believe by not letting Jesus in, we stand to lose. I was raised partly in Kenya and then in the Midlands as a Muslim, and I kind of believed in God, but there were lots of rules I had to abide by, and I didn't really understand most of it. And rules were often changed by the religious leaders who wore long robes and big beards. So I ran from it, as you do, don't you? And it was in my early 30s when I met a Christian, and over a period of a year, this Christian helped introduce me to Jesus. And then one day he showed me in the book of John where this beautiful picture of God being a Father in heaven, sending out his own Son to the world because he loves us. And that's where it got me. And one day in church, I just remember the Holy Spirit resting on me as I cried out to Jesus. And I still remember having this chat with God in a church in Richmond at that time. And the conversation was like this: "Oh, so this is really you?" And Jesus saying, "Yes, I am." And me saying, "Oh my Lord, so there's no going back for me?" And him saying, "No, there isn't." There was no big hoo-ha, that was it. And I gave my all that night. It's been a privilege each day. In 3, verse 20, there's this beautiful picture of Jesus standing outside of a door of a house, knocking. And he's saying, if you hear the knock, open the door and let him in. So my friend read this to me and he said to me, "Have you opened the door? Have you heard Jesus knocking?" And I said, "Well, I think so." And he said, "Well, have you opened the door?" And I said, "Well, where is this door?" And he said, "Don't worry about where the door is. Just ask Jesus to come into your life." And I said, "Okay." So I asked Jesus, "Break this door down." And something happened. I could feel it in my heart. Something happened, something so beautiful, something shifted. I don't have the vocabulary to explain what had happened, but I knew then that the light had come in, and I knew that something happened in my heart. My mother says to me, "You've been brainwashed." And I say, "Mum, my brain has been washed. If only you knew what was in my brain, you'd be pleased it got washed." And Jesus came into my life, and Jesus came into my house, and he's still knocking walls down for me and chiseling me into his image. Don't give up. Jesus asks us, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus cares. Jesus is intently listening. Blind Bart doesn't ask Jesus for money to keep him going. Bartimaeus understood that Jesus had power, and he had faith as he had heard about the Messiah. When we plead in faith to Jesus, he hears us. You might say to me, "Well, why do I need to ask Jesus? Isn't it obvious?" We're not telling God anything he doesn't already know, but we are tuning our hearts to trust God and to believe in him. And by putting it out there and saying we are releasing it to God in faith. You see, Jesus seeks a relationship with each one of us. And I find that truly different from other religions. There's this little girl asleep in bed one night, and during the night there's lightning and thunder, and the mum wakes up and she's very concerned about her little girl, so she goes up and sees if she's all right, and she goes into her bedroom, opens the door, and the little girl is sitting by the windowsill looking out the window. Mum says, "What are you doing? There's lightning and thunder and you're looking out the window." And the little girl says, "Mummy, I think God's trying to take my photo." See, sometimes children get it, and sometimes we adults, we don't get it. There's a lovely story when Jesus is asked by a desperate man if he would go and visit his sick daughter. And he says, "Well, of course I'll come and visit your sick daughter." So Jesus is walking, and he's walking with his disciples. He's going through this narrow lane, and people are hearing it's Jesus, Jesus. It's pretty congested, and it's pretty crowded. And all of a sudden, Jesus stops, and he says, "Who touched me?" I mean, can you imagine, you're walking with a friend into a stadium. There's thousands of people pouring in. And then your friend says, "Who touched me?" You're like, I wouldn't worry about it. Chill out. There's always, chill out, Lord, who touched me? I mean, this woman comes out the crowd and she says, "I touched you." And he said to her, "Well, why did you touch me?" See, I think Jesus knew the answer, but he just wanted her to articulate it. She had a woman's problem and no one had been able to help her, and she'd suffered for years. And she thought when Jesus came, I thought if I could just reach out and touch his garment, not even his skin, just touch the hem of his garment, something would happen. And Jesus says, did it happen? See, I think Jesus knew the answer, but he wanted her to articulate. And the great thing about this story is the crowd was following Jesus, but Jesus stops the crowd for one woman. And Jesus says, I am valuable. And listen, what Jesus says is, look at the birds. They don't plant, they don't harvest, they don't store food. God feeds them. Are you not more valuable to him than those birds?